Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to reflect on, as bad as trade barriers are with our largest trading partner right now, they are likely to get worse, and potentially in three different ways, but only get better in two. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So right now the government are working on trying to smooth out some of the horrendous trade barriers that they have inflicted upon us, or pretending to work on smoothing them out. It's sometimes hard to tell. But there are only two things that can realistically improve as I see it. One, people can become more proficient at navigating the cumbersome mountains of red tape that businesses now face. The logistics industry will hire and train more people to manage this, and although the process will always add more time and expense to doing business, and so obviously that means that our businesses will always remain much less competitive than they were, it can certainly improve compared to the here and now, where many businesses are still flying blind and there isn't the capacity to just outsource it. All of that paperwork, all of the businesses that might need the outsourcing, the capacity isn't there yet. And then of course on the individual level, if we want to send a package to the EU to a family member or something, we're always going to be a little bit stuck there and having to just learn how to deal with that paperwork ourselves. Two, the second way in which things could improve, mostly from the point of view of businesses here, is that the government can work with the EU, mostly in terms of Northern Ireland trade, at least in the short term, to reduce the number of goods that will never pass into the EU from facing trade barriers inside the UK. Now, there are going to be a lot of discussions on a whole range of issues related to UK-EU trade, with the most intense talking taking place over the next year. There is certainly scope for some improvements in the current situation here. Although, that being said, the latest appointment of David Frost to Brexit Minister, which I talked about day before yesterday, I think, that adds an interesting dynamic, because it is believed, it's certainly been reported, that David Frost has a more hardline approach to Brexit than Michael Gove, if you will believe such a thing. So we may actually find we make less progress with David Frost in charge than we have with Michael Gove. But that's pretty much it. In terms of improvements, realistic improvements, that's where we are. Yes, some people will say, we could join a customs union, rejoin the single market. Yeah, that would absolutely improve things much more, but it's not politically realistic right now. Not until we've sent this current government packing. But it's not the case that Brexit has hit hard at the start and that improvements will lessen the impact over time. Even if by a relatively small amount, there'll be some people thinking, well, yeah, even if the improvements happen, only improve things a little bit, it's still an improvement overall. There are ways, however, in which Brexit is going to get worse. And permanently worse. I don't mean going to get worse before it gets better. I mean just get worse, and over time get worse and worse. Three ways, in fact, that I can think of that will also add a much more severe impact. So the first is related to grace periods, which I'll not spend a long time on because I've talked about these already. Essentially, the full impact of Brexit did not hit on January the 1st because the UK government, in an act of pure madness, did not agree to an implementation period to allow businesses and their own customs teams to put things in place to deal with the changed trading conditions. So what happened is the EU decided to throw out a few acts of kindness our way. I say kindness, obviously it's in their interests as well, in ways that wouldn't harm the integrity of the single market if applied for a short time. And that cannot be emphasised because Michael Gove is wanting some of these grace periods to last until 2023. And it's like, no, because what we're talking about is not applying full checks to things that don't necessarily meet the standards of the single market. Now, if you do that for a long time, you are absolutely harming the integrity of the single market because you are asking for goods to be able to pass into the single market without being able to guarantee they are of the appropriate standard. But at the moment, our standards are still essentially the same as the EU's. That's not going to change overnight. So the risk to the single market in applying a short grace period of a few months is minimal. But, they can't last forever. And the first ones are due to expire at the end of next month. So from April the 1st, unless something significant changes, some businesses will face greater trade barriers at that point. Some goods will not be allowed to be traded at all, in fact. So that means that the long list of businesses who cannot do business anymore will grow. The second way in which new trade barriers can emerge is when the government chooses to exercise their right to lower standards compared with the EU. Now, if this is done in a way that doesn't impact on trade with the EU, there isn't a problem. That's okay. It's not actually okay. I don't want our government to lower standards, but the EU will not care. However, if it's to lower standards in a way that does impact trade, and that was the whole point of Boris Johnson getting this agreed in the deal. He sacrificed literally everything else for this thing. Then the EU will counter with corrective measures, which can take a couple of forms. They could potentially ban more goods if they decide that these goods are no longer, you can no longer guarantee these are the right standard. Then they'll just say, well, we'll add this to the list of goods that are banned now. If they're not going to meet the standards for the single market. Or more usually, they will apply corrective tariffs to level the playing field again. So businesses that trade in those goods or services, but goods is what the deal is mostly concerned with, won't just find themselves with the extra Brexit paperwork, but their customers in the EU will have to pay import tariffs, which means higher costs. So effectively your goods become more expensive. But also, those customers are going to have to face more paperwork, which is a bit of a hassle for them, which sounds to me like a great way to lose even more business. Then there's the third way in which trade barriers may emerge, and this is the sort of more uncertain way, because it's not just the UK that will change standards. The EU will as well. In fact, the EU Commission has a bit of a mission to drive up standards and encourage other markets around the world to do the same. There are a lot of standards now that are just global because the single market is so important. It's not, even businesses may be producing some products for another market, just can't, it's not worth the cost of production for two different production lines. So the world tends to fall in line with those EU standards, whether it be environmental standards, standards of animal welfare, workers' rights, business transparency, tax affairs and so on. Whatever. The EU are not going to remain in a deep freeze. They haven't just developed standards over time. It's like, right, we're grand now, this is fantastic. They will continue to adopt new standards. It's what they do. The EU exists as a project for European harmony, but it does this through economic benefit. It is therefore, like all other trade blocs, a club that needs to give huge benefits to its members, which means a cost to those outside the club. So we deliberately negotiated a weak deal. We did this so that we had as few obligations towards harmonisation with the EU as possible. Well, that works both ways, because they also have next to no obligations towards us. They will not allow their improving standards to give a competitive edge to UK businesses who will be left on the old standards in the single market. So we're going to find ourselves with a choice every time the EU introduces significant new standards. We can either adopt those standards ourselves, which means we're adopting EU rules without having any say in them whatsoever. In other words, we're being rule takers. And this wouldn't have to be something the government did either. So, even if the government didn't implement something, the individual businesses who wish to sell to the EU would simply have to keep up to speed with those standards on their goods, on their production line, with the market they are mostly selling to. But it would still represent our businesses essentially following EU standards, whether through legislation or just economic necessity. The alternative is being squeezed even more out of what will always remain our most important market. But anyway, there we are, 3 ways in which trade barriers are likely to increase significantly in the future, in the near future, medium term and long term. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.